Evidence and ashes. The Mackenzie homestead looked like a battlefield after a siege. Sarah reined in her horse at the edge of the yard, taking in the devastation with a cold fury that settled deep in her chest. The soddy's roof had been torn open in 2 places, exposing the interior to the elements. The vegetable garden was trampled, fence posts pulled up and scattered. The barn door hung at an angle, one hinge torn loose. Even from here, she could see tools and equipment strewn across the yard, her mother's butter churn overturned, her father's plow lying on its side with the blade half buried in dirt. They didn't even try to hide what they were doing, Eleanor said quietly beside her. Her mother's voice was steady, but Sarah heard the tremor beneath it. They wanted us to see this, to know what they could do. Daniel's horse shifted restlessly. Where are they now? Captain Fletcher raised a hand, signaling his men to spread out. The 4 mounted police officers moved with practiced efficiency, 2 circling toward the barn while Fletcher and Constable Davies approached the soddy itself. The morning sun cast long shadows across the torn earth, making the destruction look even worse. "Henry?" Samuel Thornton called out, his voice carrying across the yard. "You hear?" For a moment, nothing. Then a figure emerged from behind the overturned water trough. Henry Blackburn, his face grim and his notebook in hand. "They left about an hour ago," he said without preamble. 4 of them. When they saw Fletcher's patrol coming up the trail, they rode west, fast. "How much did they find?" Sarah dismounted, her legs unsteady after the hard ride. "Everything." Blackburn stepped forward, his notebook still in hand. "They found the shaft at the northeast corner, went down into it, came back up with samples. I watched them from a distance. They had a proper assayer's kit. They know exactly what you've got there." Sarah felt her stomach tighten. "The mine? They were at the mine?" "About 2 hours from here," Blackburn confirmed. "I followed them after they left here. They'd already been working at the mine entrance for hours before I arrived. The wooden frame your father built around the shaft opening lay in splinters, and fresh earth had been piled around the hole. They'd been digging, expanding the opening, looking for something. They documented it," Eleanor said, her voice tight with controlled anger. "They have their own evidence now. Proof the mine exists, proof of its location, proof of its value. Which is exactly what we need from them." Sarah felt the cold calculation settle in. They've established that the mine is real and valuable. Now we establish that it's on our claim, not Crown land. We use their own greed against them. Captain Fletcher joined them, his expression carefully neutral. "Mrs. Mackenzie is right. What we need now is official documentation of the mine's location relative to your claim boundaries. Surveyed measurements that will stand up in court. And witnesses," Daniel added. He dismounted and was examining the scattered equipment in the yard. "People who can testify they saw the consortium's men here, saw them destroying your property while pretending to be legitimate surveyors." "I can testify to that," Blackburn said. "I've been documenting everything since they arrived. Times, descriptions, what they said to each other. They weren't quiet. They thought they were alone." Sarah looked around the circle of faces. Fletcher and his men, Daniel and Samuel, her mother and Blackburn. A strange alliance, born of necessity and desperation. But it might be enough. "We need to act now," she said. "Before they file whatever false claims they're preparing, before they use their influence to twist the facts, we document everything here. The damage, the mine's true location, the boundaries. We make it impossible for them to lie." Fletcher nodded slowly. "I'll need to send Davies back to Medicine Hat to fetch the surveyor, the real one, William Morrison. He's independent, respected by the courts. If he documents this, it'll carry weight." "How long?" Eleanor asked. 3 hours there, 3 back. If Morrison comes immediately, we might have him here by mid-afternoon. And in the meantime, Samuel gestured at the devastated homestead. "What if they come back with more men? What if they decide to finish what they started? Then we defend it." Sarah met her mother's eyes, saw the same determination reflected there. "We've come too far to let them take it now." The morning passed in tense preparation. While Constable Davies rode for Medicine Hat, the rest of them worked to secure the property. Fletcher and his remaining officer, Constable Warren, took positions that gave them clear sight lines to the approaches. Samuel and Daniel moved through the homestead, cataloging the damage and collecting evidence. A surveyor's stake that had been deliberately moved from its proper position near the house. Tool marks where someone had tried to alter the boundary markers near the main claim. Even a page torn from one of the fake surveyor's notebooks that had blown into a corner of the barn. Sarah and her mother worked inside the soddy, trying to salvage what they could. The damage was worse than it had looked from outside. The consortium's men had torn through their belongings with methodical thoroughness, looking for documents, letters, anything that might give them leverage. Her mother's trunk had been emptied, the carefully preserved letters from Ontario scattered and trampled. The family Bible lay face down in the dirt, its pages bent. Even Thomas's small collection of carved animals had been swept off the shelf, the wooden figures lying broken among the debris. They wanted to hurt us, Eleanor said quietly. She was holding one of Thomas's carvings, a prairie dog that James had made for him 2 winters ago. The head had snapped off. This wasn't just about the mine. They wanted us to know we could be destroyed. Sarah picked up the family Bible, brushing dirt from its cover. Inside, on the page where her parents had recorded births and deaths, someone had drawn a crude skull. The message was clear. They're trying to frighten us into giving up, she said. It won't work. But even as she said it, she felt the weight of what they were facing. This wasn't Cornelius Blackwood's clumsy intimidation or Robert Kane's desperate violence. This was calculated, professional destruction. A message from people who had done this before and would do it again. The sound of approaching horses brought everyone alert. Fletcher moved to the window, rifle ready, then relaxed slightly. "It's Morrison," he called. Davies found him. Sarah stepped outside to see the surveyor dismounting. William Morrison was a lean man in his 50s, with the weathered face of someone who spent his life outdoors and the careful precision of someone who dealt in measurements and certainties. He looked around the devastated yard with an expression that hardened into anger. "I heard what happened," he said without preamble. "Silas Pemberton tried to tell me the land office had authorized a new survey of this section. I told him I'd survey it when hell froze over unless I saw proper authorization from the territorial government, not just some emergency court order from a judge in Calgary." Sarah felt something loosen in her chest. "You know it's false?" "I know Pemberton's been taking money from someone to file irregular claims and lose paperwork." Morrison pulled his surveying equipment from his saddlebag. "I can't prove it yet, but I know it. And I know your family's claim was properly filed and properly surveyed 3 years ago. I did it myself. But we need you to survey the mine location," Sarah said. "It's at the northeast corner of our claim, a 2-hour ride from here." "I'll need to see both," Morrison said. "The boundary markers here at the homestead, and then the mine location itself. Someone's been moving stakes, trying to make it look like the mine shaft is outside your boundary. I remember exactly where I set those original markers, and I can prove they've been tampered with." "Can you document that?" Eleanor asked. "In a way that will stand up in court?" "I can, and I will." Morrison set up his transit with practiced efficiency. "Captain Fletcher, I'll need you and your men as witnesses. We'll start here at the homestead to check the main boundary markers, then ride to the mine to document its exact location relative to the claim boundaries." They spent the next hour at the homestead, while Morrison checked the boundary markers, documenting which had been moved and which remained in their original positions. Then they mounted their horses and rode northeast toward the mine, following the same trail Sarah had taken that first day. The 2-hour ride felt longer under the weight of what they might find. When they reached the northeast corner, Sarah's heart sank. The mine entrance was even more damaged than Blackburn had described. The wooden frame lay in splinters, and fresh earth had been piled around the expanded opening. Rope marks scored the edge where they'd lowered equipment. Boot prints covered the disturbed earth. Morrison dismounted and set to work with meticulous care. He measured, calculated, documented. He found the original survey markers. Some moved, some buried, but all still present. He established beyond doubt that the mine shaft was well within the Mackenzie claim boundaries and that someone had deliberately altered the markers to suggest otherwise. He also found something else. Miss Mackenzie, he called from near the eastern boundary. You'll want to see this. Sarah walked over to where Morrison was kneeling beside a partially exposed survey stake. But it wasn't one of his markers. It was older, weathered, with markings that had nearly worn away. This is from the original survey of this section, Morrison said. Before the land was opened for homesteading, it marks a mineral rights reservation. What does that mean? Sarah's mouth had gone dry. It means the government reserved the mineral rights on this section when it was first surveyed. That's not uncommon. They did it throughout the territory to protect crown interests. But here's the interesting part. He pointed to faint markings on the stake. This reservation was filed in 1878 and released back to homestead status in 1881. Someone in the Territorial Land Office specifically released the mineral rights to be included with the homestead claim. Someone made sure whoever settled here would own the minerals, Eleanor said slowly. Why would they do that? Unless they didn't know about the silver, Blackburn said. He'd been watching Morrison work, taking notes. Or unless someone who did know wanted to make sure the minerals went to a homesteader, not to the crown or a mining consortium. Morrison stood, brushing dirt from his knees. I can't speak to motives, but I can document this stake, and I can testify that the mineral rights on this claim were properly released and are now part of the homestead. That means whatever's in that mine shaft belongs to the Mackenzies, clear and legal. Sarah looked at her mother, saw the same cautious hope she felt. Can you file that documentation today? I can ride back to Medicine Hat with Constable Davies and file it within the hour, Morrison said. But Miss Mackenzie, you need to understand. Filing the documentation doesn't end this. The consortium will challenge it. They'll claim the release was irregular, or that the original survey was flawed, or that the markers prove crown land. They have lawyers and money and influence. But we'll have the truth, Sarah said, and we'll have proof. Sometimes that's enough. Morrison began packing his equipment. Sometimes. They mounted up for the ride back to the homestead, each lost in their own thoughts about what the documentation would mean. As they rode, Blackburn approached Sarah and Eleanor. There's something else you need to know, he said quietly. While those men were working at the mine this morning, they talked. I was close enough to hear some of it. What did they say? Eleanor asked. They're planning something for tonight. I couldn't hear all the details, but they mentioned the bank and a meeting. They said Whitmore needed to be dealt with before he caused more problems. Sarah felt ice slide down her spine. They're going after Edmund? It sounds like it. And if they're willing to move against a lawyer in broad daylight, they're getting desperate. We need to warn him, Eleanor said immediately. Davies can carry a message when he rides back with Morrison, Fletcher said. He'd been listening, his expression grave. But Miss Mackenzie, you need to consider your own safety. If they're escalating to open violence against legal counsel, they won't hesitate to come after you again. We can't hide, Sarah said. Not now. We're too close. Then we make sure you're not alone. Daniel had been quiet, but now he stepped forward. Samuel and I will stay here tonight. Fletcher and his men can patrol. We'll be ready if they come. Fletcher looked uncomfortable. Mr. Thornton, I appreciate the offer, but I can't officially sanction. You're not sanctioning anything, Samuel interrupted. You're patrolling the area as part of your regular duties. If you happen to patrol near the Mackenzie homestead more frequently than usual, that's just good police work. A slight smile crossed Fletcher's face. I suppose that's one way to look at it. As Morrison and Davies rode out, carrying the documentation that might save their claim, Sarah stood in the yard of her devastated home and looked at the people who'd chosen to stand with them. Her mother, fierce and unbreakable. Daniel, steady and loyal. Samuel, risking his own family's safety to help theirs. Fletcher and Warren, bending rules they believed in to serve a higher justice. Blackburn, carrying the weight of his investigation and the memory of families who died because no one stood up for them. They were outnumbered and outmatched. The consortium had money, lawyers, influence, and no scruples about violence. But they had something the consortium didn't. They had the truth, and they had each other. We should get back to work, Eleanor said. If we're staying here tonight, We need to make this place defensible. As the sun began its descent toward the western horizon, painting the prairie gold and amber, they fortified what remained of the Mackenzie homestead. They moved furniture to block windows, positioned water and ammunition where they could be easily reached, established watch positions and signals. And in the back of Sarah's mind, a question kept circling. What would the consortium do when they learned Morrison had filed his documentation? When they realized their legal trap had failed and their fake surveyors had been exposed? She suspected they'd find out before morning. The last light was fading when Fletcher called everyone together. "I need to tell you something," he said. "When Davies and I were riding out here this morning, we passed 3 riders heading toward Medicine Hat. They didn't try to hide, just nodded and kept going. But I recognized one of them." "Who?" Sarah asked. "Martin Hartwell," Fletcher said. "Senior partner at Hartwell, Morrison and Associates, the law firm representing the consortium." Sarah felt her stomach drop. "He came himself?" "That's what worries me," Fletcher said. "Men like Hartwell don't ride out to the prairie unless something's gone very wrong with their plans. Unless they're desperate enough to take direct action. Or unless they're preparing to make their final move," Blackburn said quietly. "In the other cases I investigated, the consortium always sent their lawyers in just before the violence, to establish alibis, to be visible in town while their hired men did the dirty work, to be seen having dinner at the hotel while a family's house burned down." The words hung in the air, heavy with implication. "Then we'd better be ready," Sarah said. She checked her father's revolver, felt its weight in her hand. "Whatever they're planning, whatever they're going to do, we'll be ready." But as night settled over the prairie and the first stars appeared in the darkening sky, Sarah couldn't shake the feeling that they were missing something. Some piece of the consortium's plan that hadn't yet revealed itself. She stood watch at the window, looking out at the shadowed landscape, and wondered what dawn would bring.
Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures. Thanks for watching our stories. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more epic adventures.